"You don't belong here." The words cut through the cabin like a blade delivered with surgical precision and zero remorse. Captain Monica Ashford stood in the aisle of first class, one hand on her hip, the other pointing directly at the black man seated in 1A. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. It carried the authority of someone who'd spent 28 years making decisions at 35,000 feet and never being questioned. She wore her power like her uniform, tailored, pressed, and designed to intimidate. The cabin lights caught the gold Cartier watch on her wrist, the diamond studs in her ears, the perfectly applied crimson lipstick that curved into something between a smile and a sneer. Monica Ashford looked like a woman who'd been told she was beautiful her entire life and had weaponized it into a career. The man in seat 1A didn't yell. He didn't stand. He didn't even open his eyes. He just sat there, noise-canceling headphones around his neck, hands folded in his lap, exhaustion written into every line of his face. He looked like someone who'd heard this speech before. And he had. Just never from someone wearing 4 stripes and thinking she owned the sky. What Captain Ashford didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as she stood there in her 4-inch heels clicking against the cabin floor, was that in exactly 63 minutes, the man she was about to humiliate would ground her entire airline, revoke her pilot's license, and trigger a federal investigation that would reshape aviation across the country. The quiet man in the charcoal hoodie was Dr. Marcus Hayes, and 48 hours ago he'd been sworn in as the acting director of the Federal Aviation Administration. But Monica didn't see credentials. She saw a threat to the aesthetic of her first-class cabin, and she was about to make the most catastrophic mistake of her career. Before we dive into what happened next, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if this moment makes your blood boil the way it did for the 180 passengers watching, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Now here's what Captain Ashford didn't know. The man sitting calmly in seat 1A wasn't just any passenger. He wasn't a college student trying to sneak into first class. He wasn't a fraudster with a stolen credit card. He wasn't the threat she'd decided. He was the moment she saw his skin. He was the one person on Earth who could end her career with 3 words, and in 63 minutes he would. Monica Ashford had spent 28 years treating passengers like subjects in her personal kingdom. She'd kicked people off planes for wearing ripped jeans, for speaking Spanish too loudly, for looking at her the wrong way. She had 47 formal complaints buried in HR filing cabinets. Complaints that never went anywhere because her safety record was perfect and her fuel efficiency saved the company millions. Monica Ashford was untouchable. Until she touched the wrong person. The quiet man in the hoodie was about to teach her something the Navy had taught him 2 decades ago. Real power doesn't announce itself. It just waits. And when the moment comes, it doesn't yell. It acts. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Terminal 7 at JFK International Airport like it was trying to break through. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Thursday, and the terminal felt like the waiting room of exhaustion. Delayed flights blinked red on the departure boards. Travelers slumped in chairs, earbuds and eyes closed, trying to steal sleep before boarding calls shattered the silence. The air smelled like burnt coffee, recycled air, and the particular kind of desperation that comes from spending 6 hours in an airport. Gate B-14 was packed. Horizon Atlantic Airways Flight 217 to San Francisco had been delayed twice, first for weather, then for crew scheduling issues. The passengers waiting to board were a mix of business travelers in rumpled suits, families with crying toddlers, and college kids heading home for spring break. Most of them were staring at their phones, scrolling through social media, texting apologies to people waiting on the other side of the country. Nobody was paying attention to the man standing at the end of the priority boarding lane. Dr. Marcus Hayes looked like he'd been awake for 3 days, because he had. At 51 years old, Marcus carried himself with the kind of quiet authority that comes from commanding Navy aircraft carriers and redesigning federal safety protocols. But tonight, he didn't look like a federal official. He looked like a man who desperately needed a nap. He wore a charcoal hoodie with a faded MIT logo across the chest, dark gray sweatpants that had seen better days, white sneakers that were comfortable but definitely not fashionable, and a worn leather messenger bag slung over one shoulder. His beard was graying at the edges. His eyes were bloodshot. His shoulders sagged under the weight of 72 hours spent in emergency meetings at FAA headquarters in Washington, D.C. There'd been a crisis, a big one. Faulty autopilot systems in Boeing 787s had triggered alarms across 3 continents. Flights had been grounded. Engineers had been flown in. Marcus had spent 3 straight days in conference rooms with Boeing executives, NTSB investigators, and his own team hammering out safety protocols and containment strategies. He'd slept maybe 4 hours total, eaten nothing but vending machine sandwiches and cold coffee, and missed his son's final college baseball game. But he'd made it. The crisis was contained. The planes were cleared, and now Marcus had exactly one goal: get to San Francisco in time for his son Jordan's graduation ceremony tomorrow morning. That was it. No press conferences, no official appearances. Just a father trying to see his son walk across a stage and get a diploma. He'd booked the last seat available on Flight 217, First Class Seat 1A, using his personal credit card, because the government travel account would have taken 2 days to process. He'd paid for it himself. No entourage, no assistant, no fanfare, just Marcus, his bag, and a desperate need for 5 hours of uninterrupted silence. The gate agent, a young woman named Sarah, with tired eyes and a professional smile, scanned his boarding pass. Her eyes flicked to his hoodie, then back to the screen. There was a microsecond of hesitation, a pause so brief most people wouldn't notice it, but Marcus caught it. He always did. The slight furrow of her brow, the way her smile tightened just a fraction. The unspoken question, does this guy really have a first-class ticket? But Sarah was professional. She handed him back his phone. Seat 1, a Mr. Hayes. Welcome aboard. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. He walked down the jet bridge. The sound of rain drumming on the metal roof echoed around him. He stepped onto the plane, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. The noise of the terminal fell away, replaced by the hushed luxury of first class. The air smelled like sanitized leather and expensive coffee. The seats were wide cream-colored, reclined at angles that suggested rest was not just possible but expected. Soft classical music played through hidden speakers. The lighting was warm, ambient, designed to soothe. Marcus found seat 1A, window seat, front row. Perfect. He tossed his messenger bag into the overhead bin with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd flown 10,000 hours. He collapsed into the seat, feeling the leather cushion adjust to his weight. He pulled out his noise-canceling headphones, the expensive kind that actually worked, and slipped them over his ears. He closed his eyes. Relief. Finally. The other first-class passengers were already settling in. Seat 1B held a white businessman in his 50s, Richard Palmer, wearing an Armani suit and reading the Wall Street Journal. Seat 2A held an Asian-American woman in her late 30s, Vanessa Liu, a tech attorney based in San Francisco, typing furiously on her laptop. Seat 3B held a white pharmaceutical executive named James Morrison, sipping champagne and scrolling through emails on his phone. An elderly white couple sat in 4A and 4B, matching cashmere cardigans, holding hands asleep before the plane even pushed back. Nobody looked at Marcus. Nobody questioned him. He was just another passenger in a cabin full of people who'd paid for space and silence. And then the cockpit door opened, She emerged like she was walking a runway at Milan Fashion Week. Captain Monica Ashford, 48 years old, stepped out of the cockpit, and every head in first class turned. She commanded attention, the way some people command respect, effortlessly, unavoidably, and with the kind of presence that made you wonder if you were supposed to applaud. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled into a sleek, low bun, not a single strand out of place, the kind of hairstyle that required 30 minutes and a mirror with professional lighting. Her uniform wasn't standard issue. It was tailored. The white button-down shirt fit like it had been designed specifically for her body, with one extra button undone just enough to be noticeable, just enough to suggest confidence without crossing into unprofessional. Her navy blazer hugged her waist and accentuated curves that she'd clearly worked for. The pencil skirt ended precisely at the knee, revealing toned calves and 4-inch heels that clicked against the cabin floor like a metronome of authority. The accessories told the rest of the story. A gold Cartier watch caught the overhead lights with every movement. Diamond studs sparkled when she turned her head to scan the cabin. A subtle but expensive perfume, something French, something that cost more than most people's rent, announced her presence 3 seconds before she spoke. Monica Ashford looked like a woman who'd spent her entire life being told she was beautiful and had turned it into armor. She was striking, polished, elegant, and she knew it. Her eyes swept the first-class cabin like a searchlight taking inventory of her kingdom. She saw Richard Palmer in his Armani suit and nodded slightly approving. She saw Vanessa Liu with her designer glasses and iPad Pro and smiled satisfied. She saw the elderly couple in their cashmere and deemed them acceptable. She saw James Morrison with his champagne glass and gave him a look that was just unprofessional enough to be intentional. And then her eyes landed on seat 1A. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows sculpted, waxed, microbladed to perfection, furrowed. Her crimson lips painted with precision pressed into a thin line. Her entire posture shifted. The smile vanished. The approving nod stopped mid-motion. She saw a black man, in a hoodie, in sweatpants, eyes closed, headphones on, in her seat, in her cabin, in her first class. Monica turned sharply on her heels, click, 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 and marched toward the galley where her crew was preparing for departure. Her lead flight attendant, Sofia Ramirez, 34, Hispanic, with 15 years of experience and eyes that had seen too much, looked up from the beverage cart. Sophia Monica said, her voice low but sharp as a scalpel. "Who authorized that passenger in 1A? Sophia glanced over. "That's Mr. Hayes, Captain. He boarded with a valid first-class ticket." Gate agent scanned it. It came through clean. Monica's jaw tightened. Her hands, which had been resting casually on her hips, balled into fists. "Did you scan it yourself?" "The gate agent did." "Captain, his ticket is legitimate. He looks like he just rolled out of a gym." Monica's voice dropped to a whisper, but the venom was unmistakable. "This is first-class Sophia. Not a basketball court, not a locker room. We have standards here. Run his ticket again. I don't care what the system says. I've seen credit card fraud before. People like him steal upgrades all the time." Sophia's face hardened. She'd been flying with Monica for 6 years. She'd heard this before. She'd reported it before. Twice. Both complaints had been buried by HR because Monica's safety record was flawless and her fuel efficiency was legendary. Sophia had learned the hard way that speaking up got you reassigned to regional routes and red-eye flights. "Captain, his ticket is valid. He's a paying passenger. He has every right to—" "I didn't ask for a lecture, Sophia." Monica's eyes flashed. "I asked you to verify his ticket. Now do your job or I'll find someone who will." Standing behind Sophia was Emma Torres, 26. Hispanic, a junior flight attendant on her 3rd month with Horizon Atlantic. She'd taken this job because she loved flying, loved meeting people, loved the idea of service. She hadn't expected to be standing in a galley watching her captain racially profile a passenger while her lead flight attendant stood there powerless. Emma opened her mouth to speak. Sophia caught her eye and shook her head. "Not now. Not here. Not if you want to keep this job." Monica didn't wait for a response. She straightened her blazer, adjusted her collar, checked her reflection in the polished metal of the galley wall, and walked toward seat 1A. In the cockpit, First Officer Tyler Brennan, 29, white with 5 years of flying experience and a mortgage that required him to stay employed, watched through the open door. He saw Monica approaching 1A. He saw the look on her face. He'd seen that look before. Last month, Monica had kicked a college student off a flight for wearing ripped jeans. The kid turned out to be the daughter of a tech CEO. The complaint went nowhere. 2 months before that, Monica had removed an elderly Hispanic man she thought was confused about his seat. He turned out to be a retired federal judge. The complaint went nowhere. 3 months before that, Monica had questioned a young black woman's ticket so aggressively that the woman cried. She turned out to be a vice president at a Silicon Valley startup. The complaint went nowhere. Monica Ashford had a perfect safety record. She saved the airline fuel by flying efficient routes. Her on-time departure rate was 97%, and in the world of commercial aviation, that meant she was protected. Complaints disappeared. Passengers got vouchers. Monica kept flying. Tyler watched her stop in front of 1A. He knew what was about to happen. He said nothing, because saying something meant risking his career. And Tyler had a wife, a mortgage, and a baby on the way. So he looked down at his pre-flight checklist and pretended he didn't see. Monica stopped directly in front of Marcus, blocking the aisle, casting a shadow across his seat. She didn't tap his shoulder politely. She didn't clear her throat and wait for him to notice. She stood there, arms crossed, one hip cocked, and snapped her fingers twice sharp, loud, deliberate inches from his face. Snap. Snap. Marcus opened his eyes slowly. He wasn't startled. He was used to being woken up. 20 years in the Navy had trained him to go from deep sleep to full alertness in seconds. He slid his headphones down around his neck and looked up at the woman standing over him. Confused, tired, patient. "Can I help you?" Captain Monica's voice was sweet poison, the kind of tone that sounded polite on the surface but carried a threat underneath. "I need to verify your ticket." Marcus blinked. "It was verified at the gate. I verify all first-class passengers personally. It's my aircraft, my rules." She held out her hand, palm-up nails perfectly manicured in a shade of red that matched her lipstick. Marcus sighed. Not angry, not confrontational, just exhausted. He'd been here before, different plane, different decade, same script. He unlocked his phone, brought up his mobile boarding pass on the Horizon Atlantic app, and handed it to her. Monica didn't take it politely. She snatched it from his hand, her fingers wrapping around the phone like she was confiscating evidence. She held it at arm's length, squinting at the QR code like it was written in a foreign language. She turned the phone sideways, then back, then zoomed in, looking for something, anything that would confirm what she already believed. She muttered the sound loud enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. "This looks irregular." Marcus sat up straighter. His patience was thinning. "It's a standard Horizon mobile ticket. Seat 1A. Purchased 3 hours ago with a valid credit card. Everything you need is right there on the screen." Monica's eyes narrowed. With what card? The question hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Marcus's voice dropped an octave. "Excuse me, what credit card did you use to purchase this ticket?" Monica's tone was casual, conversational, like she was asking about the weather. "Because we've had issues lately with stolen cards, fraudulent bookings, people upgrading themselves without authorization. I'm sure you understand we have to protect our premium customers." By now, the entire first-class cabin was watching. Richard Palmer in seat 1B lowered his Wall Street Journal. his eyes darting between Monica and Marcus. Vanessa Liu in seat 2. Hay paused her typing, her fingers frozen above her keyboard. James Morrison in seat 3B set down his champagne glass. The elderly couple in row 4 woke up blinking in confusion. Even passengers in the economy cabin waiting in the aisle to stow their bags craned their necks to see what was happening. Sophia Ramirez stepped forward from the galley, her voice low but urgent. "Captain Ashford, I can verify the ticket in the system if you'd like me to." "I didn't ask for your input, Sophia." Monica didn't even look at her. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus. "Sir, I'm going to need you to show me a physical credit card and a photo ID. Now." Marcus's jaw tightened. He could feel the eyes on him. He could feel the judgment forming in the minds of passengers who didn't know him, didn't know his story, and were deciding right now whether he looked like someone who belonged in seat 1A. He'd been patient. He'd been calm. He'd followed every rule. But this was crossing a line. "Captain, I showed you my boarding pass. I am seated in my assigned seat. I paid for this seat with my personal credit card. Unless there is a legitimate safety concern, I don't have to show you anything else." Monica's eyes flashed. She wasn't used to being told no. In her 28 years of flying, passengers either complied immediately or got removed. There was no in-between. A safety concern. She laughed, cold, performative, designed for the audience now watching. "You're absolutely right. Let me clarify. A passenger refusing crew instructions is a safety concern. A passenger who may have fraudulently accessed a premium cabin is a security risk. So, yes, sir, this is now a safety matter." She turned toward the cockpit. Tyler, standing in the doorway, flinched. "Call ground security. Tell them we may have an unauthorized passenger in seat 1A. Tyler hesitated. "Captain," his ticket scanned at the gate. "Maybe we should just... I gave you an order." "First Officer Brennan." Monica's voice turned to ice. "Call security. Now." Tyler retreated into the cockpit. His hand shook as he picked up the radio. Marcus sat perfectly still. He knew what was happening. He'd seen this play out 100 times in 100 different contexts. The assumptions, the accusations, the certainty that he didn't belong. He could fight it. He could argue. He could demand to speak to a supervisor, or he could let it play out, document everything, and handle it the way the Navy taught him, strategically, decisively, and with overwhelming force at exactly the right moment. He reached into his pocket, slowly, deliberately, making sure Monica could see his hands, and pulled out his wallet. Not to comply, but to create a record. He placed 3 items on the armrest between seats 1A and 1B, lining them up like evidence at a trial. A driver's license. Washington State. Marcus Hayes. Date of birth clearly visible. A credit card. Black American Express. Marcus Hayes. The kind of card that requires a 6-figure income and an excellent credit score. A military ID. Faded but still valid. Marcus Hayes, Commander, United States Navy, retired. There. Marcus's voice was calm, controlled, surgical. "Here's my identification, Captain Ashford. My ticket is valid. My payment cleared. And I'm not moving." Monica picked up the military ID. She glanced at it. Marcus Hayes, Commander, USN, retired, and tossed it back onto the armrest like it was a grocery receipt. Fake IDs are easy to print these days. You'd be surprised what people try. She keyed her radio, her voice loud and authoritative. "Ground security. This is Captain Ashford Horizon, Flight 217, Gate B14. We need an officer at the aircraft. Possible trespasser in first class. Repeat. Possible trespasser in first class. Richard Palmer, in seat 1. B finally spoke up. His voice was uncertain, uncomfortable, but he said it anyway. Captain, the man showed you 3 forms of ID. Maybe we should just SIR. Monica's voice cut like glass. "This is a crew matter. I need you to remain in your seat and allow me to handle this. Do not interfere with flight operations." Richard's mouth snapped shut. He looked at Marcus, then back at his newspaper, then at Monica. He said nothing else. Vanessa Liu pulled out her phone. She didn't say a word. She just opened the camera app, angled it toward the front of the cabin, and hit record. Marcus sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, his face calm. He looked at Monica Ashford at her perfectly tailored uniform, her diamond studs, her crimson lipstick, her expression of absolute certainty, and he said 5 words that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "You just made a choice, Captain. I hope it was worth it." It took 4 minutes for airport security to arrive. 4 minutes during which the entire cabin sat in suffocating silence, passengers pretending to read or scroll through their phones while sneaking glances at the man in seat 1A and the captain standing over him like a warden. 4 minutes during which Marcus didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. 4 minutes during which Monica stood with her arms crossed, her chin raised, her heels planted like she was defending territory. When the jet bridge door opened, 2 airport police officers stepped onto the plane. The first was Officer Derek Callahan, 44 white with 18 years on the job, and the kind of tired eyes that came from seeing the same problems over and over. The second was Officer Nina Vasquez, 31 Hispanic sharp, and observant, already scanning the scene before anyone spoke. Derek looked at Monica, then at Marcus. He saw a calm, middle-aged black man sitting peacefully with 3 forms of ID arranged neatly on his armrest. He saw a captain in a perfectly pressed uniform with her arms crossed and her jaw set. He didn't see a threat. But the captain was the captain. And in aviation, the captain's word was law. "What's the issue?" Captain Derek asked, his tone professional, but already skeptical. Monica gestured toward Marcus like he was evidence at a crime scene. "This man is seated in first class with what I believe to be a fraudulent ticket. He's refused to provide adequate verification and has been belligerent with my crew." Nina Vasquez raised an eyebrow. She glanced at Sofia Ramirez, who was standing near the galley, her face pale. "Ma'am, is that accurate?" Sofia hesitated. Her job was on the line. She'd been flying for 15 years. She had a mortgage. She had a daughter in middle school. She couldn't afford to lose this job. But she also couldn't stand here and lie. He showed his ticket. Sofia said, quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. It scanned properly at the gate. "It's valid." Monica's head snapped toward Sofia like a whip. "I didn't ask you to second-guess my judgment, Sofia. I asked you to do your job. This is a safety matter, and I am in command of this aircraft." Derek stepped between them, holding up a hand. "Captain, with all due respect, if the ticket scanned at the gate and he has identification, what exactly is the issue here?" "The issue," Monica said, her voice sharpening to a point, "is that I don't believe he paid for this seat. Look at him." She gestured to Marcus's hoodie, his sweatpants, his sneakers. "Does that look like someone who can afford first class?" The cabin went dead silent. Nina Vasquez's face hardened. She'd heard this before. She'd lived this before. Her cousin had been kicked off a flight last year for looking suspicious while wearing a college sweatshirt. Her uncle had been questioned by police in a department store for acting nervous while Christmas shopping. She knew exactly what was happening. Richard Palmer, in seat 1B, cleared his throat. His voice was uncomfortable, uncertain, but he said it anyway. Captain, the man just showed you 3 forms of identification. A driver's license, a credit card, and a military ID. Maybe we should just let him, sir." Monica's voice was a knife. "This is a crew matter. You need to stay out of it. This is about the safety and security of this flight, and I will not have passengers interfering with my authority." Richard's face flushed. He looked at Marcus, then back at Monica, then down at his newspaper. He said nothing else. Vanessa Liu was still recording. Her phone was angled perfectly, capturing Monica's face. Marcus's calm expression and the two police officers standing in the aisle. She didn't say anything. She just kept filming. Marcus finally stood. He was 6'2". He towered over Monica's 5'6" frame, even in heels. He didn't loom. He didn't intimidate. He just stood, his posture straight, his hands at his sides, his voice calm and measured. "Captain Ashford Marcus," said his tone surgical. "You have accused me of fraud, theft, and trespassing. You have called law enforcement based on zero evidence. You've done this in front of 180 witnesses, many of whom are recording." He gestured to the phones now raised throughout the cabin. "I'm going to give you one chance to apologize and end this, because if you don't, what happens next will follow you for the rest of your career." Monica tilted her chin up, meeting his eyes without flinching. She'd spent 28 years in cockpits where she was the final authority. She'd been questioned before, she'd been challenged before, and every single time she'd won. "Is that a threat?" she asked. "It's a forecast." Derek Callahan sighed. He'd been a cop long enough to know when something was wrong, even if he couldn't do anything about it. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step off the aircraft while we sort this out. It's just procedure. We'll get everything cleared up on the jet bridge." Marcus looked at the officer. He knew this game. If he resisted, he was the aggressor. If he got angry, he was dangerous. If he complied, he admitted fault. There was no winning move in this moment. So he made a choice. He would play the long game. "Fine," Marcus said. "I'll deplane. But I'm filing a formal complaint with the Department of Transportation, the airline, and the FAA. This is racial profiling, Officer Callahan. You all just became witnesses." He reached up to the overhead bin, pulled down his messenger bag, and slung it over his shoulder. He picked up his 3 forms of ID from the armrest and slid them back into his wallet. He turned to face Monica one last time. "You just made a choice, Captain. I hope you can live with it." He walked calmly toward the exit, flanked by the 2 officers. As he passed Monica, he stopped for just a second. 63 minutes, he said quietly, so quietly that only she could hear. "That's how long you have left." Monica's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus didn't answer. He just kept walking. As he stepped onto the jet bridge, the cabin erupted in whispers. Passengers leaned across aisles, whispering to each other. Phones stayed raised, recording. Sophia stood frozen in the galley, her eyes filled with something that looked like shame. And Monica Ashford turned back toward the cockpit, her heels clicking against the floor, her head held high, completely confident that she'd just protected her aircraft from a security threat. She had no idea she'd just ended her career. On the jet bridge, Marcus stood between the 2 officers. The rain hammered on the metal roof above them, a steady drumbeat that matched the pulse in his temples. Nina Vasquez was filling out an incident report on a digital tablet. Derek Callahan was on his radio, calling it in as a passenger removal, nonviolent captain's discretion. But inside the cabin, the digital storm was already brewing. Vanessa Liu hit post on Twitter before the officers had even reached the jet bridge door. Her fingers moved fast, typing with the fury of someone who'd just witnessed something she couldn't unsee. The tweet read, "At Horizon Air pilot just racially profiled a black passenger in first class, accused him of fraud with zero evidence." He had 3 forms of ID, including a military ID. She still called police, recorded everything. "This is disgusting. Hashtag Horizon Air. Hashtag racial profiling. Hashtag Flight 217. Attached was a 42-second video clip showing Monica standing over Marcus, the exchange of IDs, and Monica calling security. Within 3 minutes, 1,847 retweets. Within 5 minutes, 4,223 likes. Within 7 minutes, the video had been reshared to Reddit, Instagram, and TikTok. James Morrison, the pharmaceutical executive in Seat 3B, posted to LinkedIn. His feed was followed by 18,000 people, mostly corporate executives, board members, and business leaders. His post was professional, measured, and damning. Just witnessed shocking discrimination on Horizon Atlantic Flight 217 at JFK. Captain accused a well-dressed, credentialed passenger of stealing a first-class seat based purely on appearance. As a frequent flyer and platinum member for 12 years. I'm appalled. At Horizon Atlantic, this is unacceptable. I'll be reconsidering my corporate travel contracts. The comments flooded in immediately. CEOs, VPs, directors, people who booked hundreds of thousands of dollars in corporate travel every year, people who had the power to move money. A college student in economy seat 28F had filmed the entire thing on her phone. She posted it to TikTok with text overlay, "Y'all, the captain just kicked a black man out of first class for looking suspicious. He had his ticket. He had his ID." She still called the cops. This is 2024, and we're still doing this hashtag airline racism, hashtag Horizon Air, hashtag viral. The video hit 127,000 views in 10 minutes. By the time the plane was supposed to push back, it had crossed 500,000. Inside the cockpit, Tyler Brennan was running through his pre-flight checklist, trying to pretend nothing had happened. Monica settled into the captain's seat, smoothing her skirt, adjusting her headset, checking her instruments with the calm of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. Captain Tyler said carefully, his voice uncertain, he had his ticket. He had 3 forms of ID. Are you sure he had a phone screen, Tyler? Monica didn't look at him. Anyone can fake those. You'd be surprised how often people try to scam their way into premium cabins. But the gate agent scanned it. It came back valid. Gate agents are 22-year-old kids making $12 an hour. They don't catch half the fraud that comes through. Monica flipped switches on the overhead panel, her movements precise and practiced. We're already delayed. Let's get this bird in the air. Run the pre-start checklist. Tyler hesitated. His hand hovered over the checklist. Captain, what if he files a complaint? Monica laughed. It wasn't a warm sound. It was cold, dismissive, the laugh of someone who'd heard that threat 100 times and watched it disappear into HR paperwork. He can file all he wants. I've been doing this for 28 years, Tyler. The union will handle it. They always do. Now run the checklist. Tyler looked down at his instruments. He thought about the last time Monica had kicked someone off a flight. The college student in ripped jeans. The elderly Hispanic man. The young black woman who'd cried. All of them had filed complaints. None of them had gone anywhere. Tyler said nothing. He started the checklist. Outside on the jet bridge, Marcus pulled out his phone. He didn't call his lawyer. He didn't call customer service. He didn't call his wife. He called a number that 99.9% of people on Earth don't have. It rang once. FAA Operations Command. A voice answered, crisp and professional. This is Henderson. Marcus's voice was calm, measured, and colder than the rain outside. This is Director Hayes. Authorization code Tango 7 Whiskey Niner. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath, the kind of pause that happens when someone realizes they're talking to the person who signs their paycheck. Director Hayes. The voice shifted from casual to razor-sharp in 1 second. Sir, we weren't expecting contact. Is this an emergency? It's a code yellow. I need a ground stop on Horizon Atlantic Flight 217 at JFK Gate B14. Do not let that aircraft push back. The voice didn't hesitate. Sir, can you confirm the reason for the ground stop pilot misconduct? Passenger rights violation. Racial profiling. Marcus's voice didn't rise, didn't waver. I am the passenger. I'm invoking regulatory authority under Title 49, Section 44,709. That aircraft is grounded until I say otherwise. Understood, Director. The voice was typing fast keys, clicking in the background. Issuing ground stop now. Aircraft will be flagged in the national system. Do you need additional support? Get me the Horizon Atlantic VP of Operations on the line in 5 minutes, and pull the cockpit voice recorder log from the last 30 minutes. I want timestamps on every word spoken in that cockpit and that cabin. Yes, sir. Is there anything else? Marcus looked through the window at the plane. He could see Monica through the cockpit window settling into her seat, adjusting her headset completely, unaware that her career had just ended. That's all for now, Marcus said. But keep this line open. I'm not done. He hung up. Officer Nina Vasquez was watching him. She'd heard the entire conversation. Her eyes were wide. Sir, she said carefully, who exactly did you just call? Marcus reached into his messenger bag. He pulled out a leather credential case, the kind that folds open to reveal a badge and an ID. He flipped it open. The badge was gold, Federal Seal, Official, Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration, Marcus Hayes, Ph.D., Administrator. Acting. Nina's jaw dropped. Derek Callahan, standing next to her, went pale. You're the director of the FA? Anina's voice was barely a whisper. I am. Marcus closed the credential case and slid it back into his bag. And that captain just violated about 14 federal regulations. So yes, Officer Vasquez, you do have the authority to keep that plane at this gate, because I'm giving it to you. Inside the cockpit, Monica was ready. The passengers were boarded. The doors were closed. The ground crew had disconnected the jetway. The engines were prepped. Everything was green. She keyed the radio, her voice smooth and professional. Kennedy, ground horizon 217, heavy ready for pushback gate. Bravo 14. The radio crackled. There was a pause. A long pause. The kind of pause that makes pilots nervous because air traffic control never pauses unless something is very, very wrong. Horizon 217. Kennedy ground. Hold position. Monica frowned. She glanced at Tyler, who shrugged. She keyed the mic again. Kennedy ground horizon 217. We are fully boarded, doors closed, ready to push. We have a slot to make. What's the hold? Another pause. Longer this time. 5 seconds. Then 10. When the voice came back, it was different, slower, deliberate, grave. Horizon 217. Kennedy ground. Do not repeat. Do not push back. Shut down engines immediately and return to the gate. Monica's hand froze on the throttle. What? Horizon 217. You have been issued a Level 1 ground stop by FAA Command Authority. You are ordered to remain at the gate. Do not disconnect ground power. Do not start engines. Acknowledge. Tyler's face went white. Level 1 ground stops were reserved for terrorism threats, catastrophic mechanical failures, or national emergencies. They weren't issued for routine delays. Kennedy ground horizon 217. Monica's voice cracked for the first time. We are code green. No mechanical issues, no security threats, no passenger disturbances. What is the nature of this hold? The controller's voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reading from a script he didn't want to read. Horizon 217. The ground stop is specific to your flight and specific to the pilot in command. Hold position. Law enforcement is returning to your aircraft. Do not leave the flight deck. Monica ripped off her headset. Her hands were shaking. What the hell is going on? Tyler was staring at the radio like it had just grown fangs. Captain Level 1 stops are they're for emergencies. Did something happen with that passenger? Monica's mind was racing. The passenger, the man in the hoodie, the man she'd kicked off for fraud, the man who'd looked at her and said 63 minutes. No, there was no way. He was nobody, just another guy with a fake ticket trying to sneak into first class. But the radio had said specific to the pilot in command. That meant her. 3,000 miles away in a glass tower in downtown Seattle, a phone rang. Gregory Mendoza, 56 Vice President of Flight Operations for Horizon Atlantic Airways, was in the middle of a quarterly budget review when his emergency line lit up. Red light, the one that only rang for crashes, hijackings, or catastrophic failures. He excused himself from the conference room, stepped into the hallway, and grabbed the phone. Mendoza, Mr. Mendoza, this is FAA Command Center in Herndon, Virginia. The voice was military crisp. We have a situation involving one of your captains. Gregory's stomach dropped. Did we crash? Is there a hijacking? No, sir. Personnel issue. Your captain, Monica Ashford, just forcibly removed a passenger from first class on Flight 217 at JFK. Gregory closed his eyes. Monica. Again. Okay, look, I'll handle it. We'll comp the passenger, send him some miles, issue an apology. What's the damage, Mr. Mendoza? The voice cut him off like a guillotine. The passenger she removed was Dr. Marcus Hayes. Gregory's mind went blank. He didn't recognize the name. Who Dr. Marcus Hayes was confirmed as acting administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration 48 hours ago. Your captain just racially profiled and ejected the head of the FAA from his seat. The hallway tilted. Gregory grabbed the wall to keep from falling. She did. What Director Hayes has issued a Level 1 ground stop on Flight 217. He's requested your presence at JFK immediately. He wants Captain Ashford removed from the flight deck. And Mr. Mendoza, he's opening a formal investigation into your airline's complaint resolution procedures. Gregory didn't walk. He ran. As Marcus stood on the jet bridge waiting for Monica to be summoned, his mind drifted. Not to anger, not to revenge, to memory. Atlanta, Georgia, 1998. Marcus was 24 years old. He'd just graduated from the Naval Academy, newly commissioned as an ensign, fresh off his first deployment. He'd spent 6 months on an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf, managing logistics for a fighter squadron, living on 4 hours of sleep and instant coffee. He'd come home on leave to visit his mother. He'd walked into a hotel in downtown Atlanta, the Grandview International 4 stars marble lobby chandeliers that cost more than his car. He was in his service dress blues. White uniform, gold buttons, officer's insignia on his shoulders, medals on his chest, National Defense Service Medal, Sea Service Deployment, ribbon, Navy Achievement Medal. He looked like a recruitment poster. The man at the front desk looked him up and down. Can I help you? I have a reservation. Hayes. Confirmation number. We don't have any reservations under that name. Marcus pulled out the printed confirmation email, the kind hotels sent in 1998 before smartphones existed. Here. I booked it 3 weeks ago. Confirmation number right here. The clerk barely glanced at it. System's down. You'll have to come back when the manager's around. When will that be? Tomorrow? Maybe the day after. Marcus looked around. The lobby was half empty. He could see the key rack behind the desk, dozens of room keys hanging on hooks, dozens of vacancies. Sir, I just need 1 night. I can pay in advance. Cash if you need. Like I said, system's down. Behind Marcus, the door opened. A white couple walked in golf clothes, visors, polo shirts with country club logos. They were laughing, sunburned, carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. Welcome to the Grandview. The clerk's face transformed into a smile. Checking in. Right this way. The man handed over a credit card. The clerk swiped it, printed a key card, and handed it over in 30 seconds. You're in room 412. Elevators are to your right. Enjoy your stay. Marcus stood there in his Navy uniform, medals glinting under the chandeliers, watching a couple in golf clothes get a room key in less time than it took to order coffee. The clerk looked at him. You still here? Marcus didn't argue. He walked out. He slept in his rental car that night, reclined the seat as far as it would go in a Denny's parking lot, his uniform hanging in a plastic garment bag in the back seat, his medals in a box on the passenger seat. The next morning, he sat in that Denny's booth with a cup of coffee and his laptop, a bulky IBM ThinkPad that weighed more than his duffel bag. He opened a blank document, and he started writing. Not a complaint, a plan. A plan for what the aviation and hospitality industries could look like if accountability wasn't optional, if dignity wasn't negotiable, if standards couldn't be weaponized against the people they were supposed to protect. That plan became his master's thesis at MIT. That thesis became his doctoral dissertation. That dissertation became the foundation for federal oversight protocols he'd spend the next 15 years implementing. JFK International Airport. Present day. Marcus blinked, pulled back to the present by the sound of footsteps on the jet bridge. He didn't tell that story for sympathy. He told it because it was the reason he took this job. Not for the title, not for the office, not for the power. For the 24-year-old kids in uniform who'd come after him, and for the 51-year-old man in a hoodie who just wanted to sit down. Inside the cockpit, the radio squawked again. Horizon 217, this is Station Manager Davis. Captain Ashford, you are ordered to deplane immediately and report to the gate podium. Monica's face went white. I'm in the middle of pre-flight procedures. We're about to... This is not a request, Captain. The voice was sharp, urgent, bordering on panic. Mr. Mendoza is on the line from Seattle. He said, and I quote, "Get her off that plane now, or she's fired before she reaches the podium." Tyler stared at her. The passengers in first class, who'd been pretending not to listen, were now openly watching through the open cockpit door. Monica unbuckled her harness with shaking hands. She stood. Her legs felt unsteady, like the floor of the cockpit had tilted. She straightened her blazer, smoothed her skirt, checked her reflection in the small mirror mounted near the door. She looked perfect, but she felt like the ground was falling away beneath her. Sophia appeared in the doorway. "Captain, what's happening? I don't know." Monica's voice was barely a whisper. For the first time in 28 years, she sounded scared. She walked down the aisle. Every passenger stared. Some held up phones, still recording. Richard Palmer in 1B muttered something to Vanessa Liu. James Morrison shook his head. The elderly couple in row 4 looked confused. Monica's heels clicked against the cabin floor, click, 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 each step echoing like a countdown. She stepped onto the jet bridge. The metal floor clanged under her heels. She saw Officer Vasquez standing at attention, hands behind her back, face grim. She saw Officer Callahan standing next to her, his expression unreadable. And then she saw him, the man from seat 1A, the fraud, the trespasser, the man she'd kicked off her plane. He was leaning against the railing, phone in hand, completely calm, like he'd been waiting for her. Monica's fury reignited. She marched toward him, her heels clicking faster, her hands balling into fists. "You!" She pointed at him like she was pointing at a criminal. "You called corporate. You think filing a complaint is going to change anything I've been flying for 28 years? I've dealt with people like you before. You think you can intimidate me? You think... Stop talking." Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't move. He just spoke 2 words and the entire jet bridge went silent. "Excuse me." Monica's voice was shrill now, losing its polish. "You are currently in violation of FAA Regulations 91.13, 121.5, 42, and 49 U.S.C., Section 44,902. Marcus's voice was surgical, precise, every word measured. "Every word you say from this point forward can and will be used in a federal investigation. I suggest you stop talking." Monica laughed. It was a desperate, brittle sound, the laugh of someone who didn't understand that the ground had already collapsed beneath her. "Who do you think you are? A lawyer? Some kind of activist? You think you can scare me with legal code?" Marcus reached into his messenger bag, slowly, deliberately. He pulled out the leather credential case. He opened it. The gold badge caught the fluorescent light. Monica's eyes went from the badge to his face, to the badge to his face. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. "My name is Dr. Marcus Hayes," he said quietly. "I am the acting administrator of the Federal Aviation Administration. 48 hours ago, I was confirmed by the Secretary of Transportation. You just accused me of fraud. You called me a security risk. You had me removed from an aircraft based on the color of my skin." Monica's knees wobbled. She grabbed the railing. I didn't... If I had known... Stop! The word hit like a physical blow. Marcus stepped closer. "That's the problem, Captain Ashford. You're about to say if I had known who you were. But my identity is irrelevant. If I were a teacher, a mechanic, a janitor, a college student, I would still deserve to sit in the seat I paid for. The fact that you're only scared now because you know my title tells me everything I need to know about your judgment." He stepped even closer. Not threatening, just present. You don't get to fly people safely if you can't see them as human. Station Manager Davis approached, holding a phone on speaker. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Captain Ashford." A voice came through the phone, shaking with barely controlled fury. It was Gregory Mendoza, the VP of Flight Operations. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Monica couldn't speak. Her throat had closed. "You racially profiled a federal official. You violated Department of Transportation passenger rights protocols. You created a public relations disaster that is currently trending on 6 different platforms. CNN is calling. The NAACP is calling. The Secretary of Transportation is calling. And worst of all, you gave the man who regulates our entire airline a reason to shut us down. Mr. Mendoza, you are relieved of duty effective immediately." The voice was ice. "Badge, ID, uniform insignia. Hand them to Station Manager Davis right now." Monica looked at Davis. He was holding out his hand, his face grim, his eyes unable to meet hers. She reached for her lanyard. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't unclip it. Officer Vasquez stepped forward. Her voice was gentle. "Here, let me help." The lanyard came off Monica's neck. The plastic ID card swung free her photo, her name, her employee number, her access to every secure area of every airport in the country. It felt like losing a limb. Then her wings. The gold pin she'd earned after 4 years of training, 4 years of simulator hours, 4 years of check rides and exams, and proving herself in a field dominated by men. She unpinned them from her blazer with trembling fingers. The metal felt cold. She handed them to Davis. He took them without a word. "Your medical certificate is suspended pending review," Marcus said. His voice wasn't triumphant. It wasn't angry. It was just factual. "You will not fly any aircraft until the FAA completes a full investigation into your conduct, your flight history, and every passenger complaint filed against you in the last decade." Monica's voice cracked. I have 2 years until retirement. My pension should have thought about that before you turned your cockpit into a courtroom." Davis handed the phone back to Mendoza. "Ms. Ashford," Mendoza said, and the use of Ms. instead of Captain hit like a slap. "Security will escort you out of the terminal. Do not speak to the press. Do not post on social media. Do not contact any crew members. Do not return to any Horizon Atlantic facility. Your union representative will contact you within 48 hours. This call is over." The line went dead. Monica stood there, stripped of her badge, her wings, her authority, her identity. She was just a woman in a tailored uniform that no longer meant anything. "Ladies and gentlemen," the gate agent's voice came over the PA Horizon Atlantic flight. 217 will be delayed approximately 45 minutes while we bring in a replacement captain. We apologize for the inconvenience and appreciate your patience. Inside the cockpit, Tyler Brennan was staring at the empty captain's seat. Sophia leaned in through the door. You knew, didn't you? You knew she was wrong. Tyler's voice was barely audible. I always know. I just never say anything. Sophia's face hardened. That makes you part of the problem. A new captain arrived 20 minutes later. Captain Denise Warren, 52. Black woman, 25 years of flying experience. Calm eyes, steady hands. She walked past Monica, without a word, entered the cockpit, introduced herself to Tyler, and began her pre-flight checklist. Like this was just another Tuesday. Monica had to walk through the terminal, past the gates where other crews were boarding flights, past the passengers who'd filmed her, past the Horizon Atlantic employees who'd whispered about her for years but never said anything because she was protected, past the TSA checkpoint where officers watched her with knowing eyes, past the coffee shop where off-duty pilots glanced at her and looked away. She wasn't in handcuffs, but she felt like she was. A young black girl, maybe 8 years old, was sitting with her father near gate B16. The girl pointed at Monica as she walked by. Daddy, is that the mean pilot from the video? The father looked up from his phone. He nodded. Good, the girl said loudly. She was being mean to that man for no reason. I'm glad she got in trouble. Monica kept walking, eyes down, heels clicking, past the security doors, through the employee exit, into the parking garage. She sat in her Mercedes, hands on the steering wheel, unable to turn the key. Her phone buzzed. Text from her sister. Monica, are you kidding me? This is all over Twitter. Mom is freaking out. What were you thinking? Text from her ex-husband. You always thought you were untouchable. Guess not. Text from her union rep. Monica, don't say anything to anyone. We'll try to salvage this, but I have to be honest with you. This is bad. This is really, really bad. Then an email notification. Subject, immediate suspension notice. Federal investigation. She couldn't open it. She just stared at the subject line as rain hammered on the roof of her car. 30,000 feet above Kansas, 3 hours into flight. 217. The cabin was quiet. First-class passengers sipped wine, read novels, dozed with blankets pulled up to their chins. The hum of the engines was steady, rhythmic, almost meditative. Outside the window, the cloud layer stretched endlessly, lit silver by moonlight. Marcus was awake. He stared out at the darkness beyond the wing, his reflection ghosted in the window. His phone was on airplane mode, but he knew what was waiting when he landed. The press, the investigations, the hearings, the interviews, the scrutiny. He didn't want any of it. He just wanted to see his son graduate. Sophia Ramirez approached with the drink cart. She stopped at his row, her movements careful, almost reverent. Director Hayes, can I get you anything? Water's fine, Sophia. Thank you. She poured sparkling water into a glass, added a twist of lime without asking because she'd seen him drink it that way earlier. Her hands shook slightly as she set the glass on his tray table. Director Hayes, she said quietly, leaning in so only he could hear. I need to say something. I reported Captain Ashford twice. 2 years ago, she told a Hispanic family they didn't belong in first class because their kids were too loud. Last year, she made a Muslim passenger move seats because another passenger felt uncomfortable. Both times, I filed formal complaints with HR. Both times, I was told that if I pursued it further, I'd be terminated for creating a hostile work environment. Marcus looked up at her. Do you have documentation? I kept copies of everything. Sophia's voice trembled. Dates, names, witness statements, emails from HR telling me to drop it. I kept it all because I knew. I knew someday someone would need it. Marcus wrote an email address on a napkin and handed it to her. Send everything you have to this address. Every document, every email, every witness name. You won't be retaliated against. I'll make sure of it. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back. Thank you. Thank you for not letting this disappear. FAA Headquarters, Washington, D.C. Marcus's Deputy Administrator, Janet Torres. 48 Hispanic former Air Force logistics officer was fielding calls in her office at midnight. The press had descended like locusts. Every major news outlet wanted a statement. Every aviation blog wanted details. Every civil rights organization wanted confirmation. Her assistant poked his head through the door. CNN is on line 1, MSNBC on line 2, New York Times on line 3, and the Secretary of Transportation is holding on the secure line. Janet picked up the secure line. Mr. Secretary? Janet, what the hell is happening? The secretary's voice was sharp. I've got the CEO of Horizon Atlantic in my office. He's telling me one of his captains racially profiled Marcus Hayes. Is that true? Yes, sir. It's true. We have video. We have witness statements. We have the cockpit voice recorder. It's all documented. Jesus Christ. The secretary exhaled. How bad is it? Bad, sir. The video has 8 million views. It's trending #1 on Twitter. The hashtags Horizon Air Racial Profiling and Justice for Dr. Hayes are all in the top 10. We've received 42,000 complaints through the DOT hotline in the last 3 hours. What does Marcus want? He wants a full investigation into Horizon Atlantic's complaint procedures. He wants to know why 47 complaints against this captain were buried. And he wants a new federal mandate requiring annual bias training for all commercial pilots. The secretary was silent for a moment. Draft it. I'll sign it. And Janet, make sure Marcus knows he has my full support. What happened to him was unacceptable. Yes, sir. Janet hung up and immediately texted Marcus' boss. This is everywhere. Hashtag Horizon Air is trending #1 worldwide. Video has 8 million views. Secretary wants to sign new bias training mandate. What else do you need? Marcus texted back from the plane. Pull every complaint filed against Ashford for the last 10 years. Pull her training records. Start drafting the mandate. Make it annual. Make it federal. Make it impossible to ignore. Horizon Atlantic Headquarters, Seattle. Gregory Mendoza sat in a glass-walled conference room with the airline's CEO, Linda Barnett, 61 White, and their entire legal team. The lawyers had spread out files across the table, thick folders full of complaints, incident reports, and HR documentation. Linda's voice was ice. How many complaints do we have on file for Ashford? The HR director, pale and sweating, flipped through a folder. 47 formal complaints over 12 years. 16 involved racial profiling. 8 involved religious discrimination. 12 involved appearance-based removals. 3 involved disability discrimination. And we did nothing. She had a perfect safety record, the HR director said weakly. She saved the company fuel costs. Her on-time departure percentage was, I don't care if she flew the plane with her eyes closed. Linda's voice was a whip. She just handed the FAA a reason to tear us apart. What's our legal exposure? The head lawyer spoke. If Director Hayes pushes this, and he will, we're looking at Department of Transportation sanctions, FAA audits across our entire fleet, potential operational restrictions, and civil lawsuits from every passenger she's ever profiled. We're talking tens of millions in fines. Maybe more. Linda stood. She looked out the window at the Seattle skyline, at the planes taking off from SeaTac in the distance. Draft a statement. Ashford is terminated for cause effective immediately. We're cooperating fully with the FAA investigation. We're implementing mandatory bias training for all pilots and crew starting next week. We're creating an independent passenger complaint review board. And we're settling with every single person who filed a complaint against Ashford. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen. On the plane. Captain Warren's announcement. As Flight 217 began its descent into San Francisco, Captain Denise Warren's voice came over the intercom. It was warm, steady, the voice of someone who'd spent 25 years earning trust one flight at a time. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Warren. We're beginning our descent into San Francisco. Weather is clear, 62 degrees. We'll be on the ground in approximately 15 minutes. On behalf of Horizon Atlantic Airways, I want to personally apologize for the delay tonight and for the incident that occurred before departure. Our company is committed to ensuring that every passenger, every single person who steps onto our aircraft is treated with dignity and respect. That's not just policy, that's a promise. Thank you for your patience. The cabin erupted in applause. Not polite applause, real applause, the kind that comes from people who've just witnessed something important. The plane touched down at San Francisco International at 2:17 a.m. Smooth landing. Captain Warren greased it the kind of landing where passengers barely feel the wheels kiss the runway. As the plane taxied to the gate, passengers began gathering their bags, stretching, checking phones that had been off for 5 hours. But in first class, something else was happening. Richard Palmer stood up from seat 1B as Marcus gathered his messenger bag. "Mr. Hayes, Director Hayes, I owe you an apology. I sat there and watched what was happening, and I didn't do enough. I should have stood up. I should have made her stop." Marcus shook his hand. "You spoke up when it mattered. That's more than most people do." Vanessa Liu approached from 2A, her phone in her hand. "Director, I recorded everything. I've already sent the full video to 3 journalists and posted it publicly. If you need a witness statement for the investigation, I'll testify. I'll fly to D.C. Whatever you need. I appreciate that, Ms. Liu. Your documentation will help ensure this doesn't happen to the next person." James Morrison from 3B stepped forward. "Director Hayes, I'm the VP of Procurement at Grayson Pharmaceuticals. We book about $4 million in corporate travel annually with Horizon. Not anymore. I'm moving our contracts, and I'm telling my network why. You don't have to do that, Mr. Morrison. Yes, I do. Because if I don't, I'm part of the problem." The elderly couple from row 4 stopped on their way out. The woman, small and frail with kind eyes, touched Marcus's arm. "My grandson is black. He's in college. He shouldn't have to face what you faced tonight. Thank you for not letting this go." Marcus walked off the plane, down the jet bridge, into the terminal. His phone came off airplane mode, 47 missed calls, 219 text messages, 1,847 emails. He scrolled through the notifications, news alerts, interview requests, messages from colleagues, from Navy buddies, from people he hadn't heard from in 20 years. Then he saw his son. Jordan Hayes, 22, college senior, stood near baggage claim wearing his graduation gown under a jacket. He saw his father and ran. "Dad." They hugged. Marcus closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion finally catch up to him. "Dad, you're all over the internet. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, son. I'm sorry I'm late." "Late?" Jordan pulled back, looking at his father like he'd grown a second head. "Dad, you just changed aviation policy in 6 hours. You're not late. You're a legend." That night, the viral explosion. By 3 a.m. Pacific time, the video had gone supernova. Twitter, #JusticeForDaughterHayes. Trending #1 worldwide, surpassing sports scores and celebrity gossip. TikTok. The college student's video reached 12 million views. Thousands of comments poured in. "This is why we need body cameras on flights." She looked him in the face and saw a criminal. Disgusting. The way he stayed calm, I would have lost it. Reddit r/Justice served thread titled "Racist Pilot Kicks. FAA Director Off Plane. Instantly regrets it." Hit 94,000 upvotes and 11,000 comments. CNN breaking news alert: FAA Director removed from flight in alleged racial profiling incident. NBC Nightly News: Pilot suspended after ejecting federal official from first-class Fox News, struggling to spin it but failing. Horizon Atlantic faces federal investigation after passenger removal. Even conservative outlets couldn't defend it. The video was too clear, the evidence too damning. Monica's night. Monica sat in her living room, curtains drawn, lights off, staring at her phone. Her face was on every news site. Her name was trending. The comment section was a firing squad. Comment 1. She looks exactly like the type of person who thinks rules don't apply to her. Comment 2. That smug smile when she's calling security. Hope she never flies again. Comment 3. 28 years. And this is how she treated people. How many passengers did she traumatize? Comment 4. The way he stayed calm while she lost her mind. That's real power. Her doorbell rang. She didn't answer. It rang again. Then someone knocked. Then her phone rang, unknown number. She didn't pick up. Her neighbors knew. Her friends knew. Her family knew. Her daughter, who Monica hadn't spoken to in 3 years, who'd stopped returning her calls after Monica had made a racist comment at Thanksgiving, sent a text. "Mom, I told you this would catch up to you someday. You never listened. You never changed. You never..." "I'm not surprised. I'm just sad it took this long." Monica read the text 3 times. Then she threw her phone across the room. It hit the wall and the screen shattered. She didn't sleep that night. Marcus's night. Marcus attended Jordan's graduation ceremony at 7 p.m. He sat in the audience wearing the same hoodie from the plane, the same sweatpants, the same sneakers. He looked like every other parent there, tired, proud, holding a phone to record the moment. When Jordan walked across the stage to receive his diploma, the dean paused. And a special congratulations to Jordan Hayes, whose father, Dr. Marcus Hayes, administrator of the FAA, is here tonight, despite having quite an eventful day. The crowd erupted in applause. People stood. They weren't applauding Jordan, they were applauding Marcus. Marcus stayed seated, uncomfortable with the attention. Jordan gave his valedictorian speech. He'd written it weeks ago, but he added a new opening. "My father taught me that dignity isn't about what you wear or where you sit or how much money you make. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching. It's about standing up when it's easier to sit down. Dad, this one's for you," Marcus cried. Not from anger, not from vindication, from pride. Next morning, FAA announces investigation at 9 a.m. Eastern. The FAA issued an official press release. It was distributed to every major news outlet, every aviation blog, every industry publication. For immediate release, Federal Aviation Administration opens investigation into Horizon. Atlantic Airways. Washington. The Federal Aviation Administration has opened a formal investigation into Horizon Atlantic Airways Flight 217 operated on date, following an incident involving the removal of a passenger from the aircraft. The investigation will examine cockpit procedures, crew training protocols, passenger complaint, resolution systems, and adherence to federal anti-discrimination statutes. Captain Monica Ashford has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. The FAA is committed to ensuring that all passengers are treated with dignity and respect, regardless of race, religion, national origin, or appearance. Discrimination in any form has no place in American aviation. The investigation is expected to conclude within 90 days. Findings will be made public. The response was immediate. Airlines across the country began reviewing their own policies. Pilots' unions issued statements. Flight attendant associations called for reforms. Horizon Atlantic's press conference. At 11 a.m. Pacific Horizon, Atlantic held a press conference. Linda Barnett, the CEO, stood at a podium in a corporate conference room. Behind her, the Horizon logo. In front of her, 24 reporters with cameras and microphones. Linda read from a prepared statement, her voice steady, but her hands gripping the podium. Horizon Atlantic Airways does not tolerate discrimination in any form. What happened on Flight 217 was unacceptable, inexcusable, and completely contrary to our values. Captain Monica Ashford's employment has been terminated for cause. We are cooperating fully with the FAA investigation. Effective immediately, we are implementing mandatory bias awareness training for all pilots, flight attendants, and ground staff. We are establishing an independent passenger complaint review board. And we are personally reaching out to every passenger who has filed a discrimination complaint against our airline in the past decade. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Barnett, your own records show that Captain Ashford had 47 complaints filed against her over 12 years. Why were they all ignored? Linda's jaw tightened. That is part of our internal review. We failed. We failed our passengers, and we failed our employees who tried to report these issues. We take full responsibility, and we will do better. Another reporter. Will you compensate the passengers? She profiled. Yes. We've already begun reaching out to provide compensation and formal apologies. Another. What about Director Hayes specifically? We have reached out to Director Hayes through his office. We've offered a formal apology and full restitution. But more importantly, we've committed to the reforms he's advocating for, because this isn't just about one passenger or one captain, it's about fixing a broken system. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Marcus had made it a priority. Teams of investigators descended on Horizon Atlantic's headquarters, pulling files, interviewing crew members, reviewing years of complaints. The final report was 94 pages long. It was released to the public on a Thursday morning. News outlets scrambled to summarize it. The findings were damning. Over a 12-year period, Captain Ashford had been the subject of 47 formal passenger complaints. The breakdown. 16 complaints involved racial profiling passengers of color questioned, removed, or denied boarding. 8 complaints involved religious discrimination. Muslim passengers asked to move questioned about luggage. 12 complaints involved appearance-based removals, passengers in casual clothing, athletic wear, or perceived as not belonging. 7 complaints involved disability discrimination, passengers with service animals, wheelchairs, or medical devices questioned. 4 complaints involved age discrimination. Young passengers assumed to have fake tickets. Despite this record, Captain Ashford had never received formal discipline. Every complaint had been resolved with passenger vouchers and internal coaching sessions that resulted in no documented changes to her behavior. The airline's complaint resolution system was designed to protect the company, not the passengers. HR policy instructed staff to resolve complaints at the lowest level possible. Translation, offer vouchers and make it go away. Complaints against pilots with strong safety records were deprioritized. Crew members who filed complaints about colleagues were labeled difficult and reassigned to less desirable routes. No independent oversight. All complaints were handled internally. The report quoted internal emails from H.R. Ashford, saves us $200,000 annually in fuel costs. Unless she crashes a plane, we're not touching her. FAA Director 2021. The FAA surveyed 4,700 commercial pilots anonymously. The results were disturbing. 23% admitted to making judgment calls about passengers based on appearance. 41% said they'd witnessed discrimination by colleagues but didn't report it. 67% said their airline provided no training on implicit bias or passenger rights. Passenger complaint data showed troubling trends. Black passengers were 5 times more likely to be removed from flights for disruptive behavior, despite making up only 13% of passengers. Hispanic passengers were 2.8 times more likely to have their tickets flagged, as suspicious Muslim passengers were 4.2 times more likely to undergo additional security screening requested by crew. The numbers didn't lie. Consequences for Monica Ashford. The FAA's decision was final and public. Pilot's license permanently revoked under FAA Regulation 14 CFR 61.15 grounds, demonstrated inability to exercise sound judgment in command. Medical certificate denied. A psychological evaluation ordered by the FAA concluded that her pattern of discriminatory behavior and inability to recognize racial bias renders her unfit for duties requiring command authority over diverse populations. Union grievance. The Airline Pilots Association reviewed her case and declined to defend her. The video evidence, cockpit voice recorder transcript, and witness statements made her case indefensible. Her union dues had been paid for 28 years. They did nothing. Pension reduced by 40% due to termination for cause. She'd planned to retire at 50 with full benefits. Now she'd get a fraction, and not until she turned 62 criminal charges. None. What she did wasn't illegal under criminal law. It was just career-ending under federal aviation regulation. Civil lawsuits pending. 12 former passengers filed civil rights lawsuits. 6 settled out of court. 6 were moving forward. Monica's legal bills were mounting. Her lawyer issued a statement. Ms. Ashford regrets the incident on Flight 217 and is seeking counseling to address unconscious bias. She maintains that she acted in accordance with her training and judgment at the time, and she looks forward to clearing her name. The statement was universally mocked online. Unconscious bias doesn't cover calling security on a man with 3 forms of ID. Consequences for Horizon Atlantic: FAA fines $4. $2 million the maximum civil penalty for willful passenger rights violations. DOT oversight, 3-year probationary period. Random audits, mandatory quarterly reports on discrimination complaints. Any violation could result in operational restrictions or fleet grounding. Stock price down 18% in 2 weeks. Investors panicked. Corporate clients began pulling contracts. Customer trust destroyed. A YouGov poll showed that 61% of travelers said they'd avoid Horizon Atlantic after the incident. Boycott campaigns spread across social media. The financial damage was severe, but the reputational damage was worse. Consequences for the industry. Marcus appeared on 60 Minutes 3 weeks after the incident. The interview was conducted by Leslie Stahl in a studio in Washington. Stahl director Hayes, you could have filed a quiet complaint. You could have handled this internally. Why make it public? Marcus. Because quiet complaints die in HR filing cabinets, Leslie. I've read the statistics. Thousands of passengers experience what I experienced every year. Most of them don't have a badge. They don't have a platform. They file complaints, and nothing happens. If I'd stayed silent, if I'd taken a voucher and moved on, I'd be complicit in a system that harms people. This isn't about me. This is about the college student who gets pulled off a plane for wearing a hoodie. The Muslim woman forced to move seats because of her headscarf. The Hispanic family told they don't belong in first class. They deserve a system that protects them, that sees them as human beings, not threats. Stahl. Some people are saying you've gone too far, that you're using your position to punish one airline. Marcus, I'm not punishing an airline. I'm fixing a system. Horizon Atlantic buried 47 complaints. That's not an isolated incident. That's a policy. And if we don't change the policy, the next Monica Ashford will do the exact same thing. My job isn't to make airlines comfortable. It's to make passengers safe. And you're not safe if the person flying the plane sees you as a problem the moment you walk on board. The interview got 14 million views. It was shared across every platform. It became required watching and diversity training seminars nationwide. The changes were real, measurable, documented. The Hayes Protocol. The new federal mandate was signed into law 6 months after Flight 217. It was officially titled The Passenger Dignity and Anti-Bias Protocols for Commercial Aviation, but everyone called it the Hayes Protocol. Requirements. All commercial pilots, Annual Bias Awareness Training. 8 hours, mandatory failure. Results in medical certificate suspension. All airlines. Independent passenger complaint. Review boards with authority to investigate and discipline crew. All crew real-time reporting system where passengers can file discrimination complaints directly to the FAA. Bypassing airline, HR. New federal hotline. 1-800-FLY, safe staffed 24/7 by DOT investigators. The program launched in January. By June, every major airline had complied. The consequences for non-compliance were severe operational restrictions, fines, and potential certificate revocation. Horizon Atlantic reforms. Horizon hired a new Chief Diversity Officer, Captain Sandra Okonkwo, retired a former colleague of Marcus from his Navy days. She was given a budget of staff and full authority to overhaul the airline's culture. All 47 passengers who'd filed complaints against Monica were personally contacted. They received formal apologies, financial compensation, and invitations to participate in designing the new complaint resolution system. Sophia Ramirez, the flight attendant who'd tried to stop Monica, was promoted to lead flight operations auditor. Her job: investigate every crew complaint, no matter how small, and report directly to the CEO. Tyler Brennan, the first officer who'd stayed silent, completed mandatory ethics retraining. He kept his job but was assigned a mentor, a senior captain who taught him that speaking up wasn't optional. Emma Torres, the junior flight attendant, became the face of Horizon's new training videos on bystander intervention. Industry adoption. Within 4 months, Delta, United American, and Southwest adopted the Hayes Protocol voluntarily. They didn't wait for the federal deadline. They knew the public was watching. The Airline Pilots Association updated its code of conduct to include explicit anti-bias provisions. Pilots who violated them could lose union protection. The Department of Transportation added passenger rights language to every airline's contract of carriage. It couldn't be buried in fine print. It had to be displayed prominently on booking sites. Real impact documented cases. The DOT tracked outcomes in the first 6 months. Case 1, Phoenix Sky Harbor. A young black man in athletic wear was flagged by a gate agent as suspicious. Under the Hayes Protocol, a supervisor reviewed security footage, found no basis for concern, and allowed the passenger to board. The gate agent was required to complete additional training. Case 2, Dallas-Fort Worth. A Muslim woman was asked by a flight attendant to move seats because another passenger felt uncomfortable. The woman used the new FAA reporting app to file a complaint in real time. The flight attendant was suspended, investigated, and required to complete bias training before returning to duty. Case 3, LaGuardia. A Hispanic family was told by a captain that they didn't have proper documentation for first-class seats they'd purchased. Under the new complaint review board system, the case was investigated within 48 hours. The captain received a formal reprimand. The family received compensation and a public apology. The system wasn't perfect, but it was working. Monica's life. Now. Monica tried to get a job as a corporate pilot. Rejected. Background checks flagged her FAA suspension. She tried flight instruction. Rejected. Her license was revoked. She tried aviation consulting. Rejected. No one wanted to hire someone whose name was synonymous with discrimination. She now works as a manager at a car rental counter at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. She sees planes through the terminal windows every day. She watches them take off, climb into the sky, disappear into clouds. She'll never fly one again. Marcus's legacy. Marcus was confirmed as permanent FAA administrator in July. The Senate vote was 89-11. Even his critics admitted he was the right person for the job. His first act, expanding the Hayes Protocol beyond airlines. Airports, TSA checkpoints, Ground transportation. Anywhere federal jurisdiction applied passenger dignity became federal policy. He gave a speech at the Tuskegee Airmen National Convention in October. 75 years ago, black pilots had to prove they belonged in the sky. Today, we shouldn't have to prove we belong in a seat. The fight isn't over, but it's documented now, it's transparent, and when the system fails, it answers to someone. That's progress. The room stood. The applause lasted 4 minutes. 1 year after Flight 217, the aviation world looked different, not because of one confrontation on a jet bridge, but because of what came after. Captain Monica Ashford never flew again. Her pilot's license remained permanently revoked. Her name became a case study in every aviation ethics course taught at every major flight school in the country, and her face appeared in training videos with the caption, "What Not to Do." She tried to rebuild quietly, applying for ground crew positions, consulting gigs, anything adjacent to the industry she'd ruled for 28 years. But every background check surfaced the same file: Ashford Monica. FAA certificate revocation. Cause racial profiling of federal official pattern of discriminatory conduct unfit for command. She lived in a small apartment in Tacoma, now working at a car rental counter, watching planes from the airport windows, wondering how many passengers on those flights flew without fear because of what she'd lost. She still believed she'd done nothing wrong, but the world had moved on without her. Sophia Ramirez, the flight attendant who'd tried to stop Monica and been silenced, now led Horizon Atlantic's Passenger Advocacy Division, a department that didn't exist before Flight 217, and now employed 15 people with direct authority to investigate crew complaints, recommend discipline, and report findings to both the CEO and the FAA. She testified at Department of Transportation hearings, gave keynote speeches at aviation conferences, and became the voice for flight attendants across the country who'd been told for decades to stay quiet and smile. Tyler Brennan, the first officer who'd watched everything happen and said nothing, completed his ethics retraining and requested a transfer to regional routes with fewer passengers, less pressure, and more time to figure out how to find his voice before the next moment demanded it. Richard Palmer, the businessman in seat 1B who'd almost stayed silent, donated $50,000 to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and started a corporate training program on bystander intervention that his hedge fund now required for all employees. Vanessa Liu, the attorney who'd recorded everything, used the footage in a civil rights law seminar she taught at Stanford, showing her students that documentation wasn't just evidence, it was accountability. And Marcus Hayes kept flying commercial first class and economy, always in a hoodie, always tired, always watching, because the moment you stop being a passenger is the moment you forget what passengers need. The Hayes Protocol became federal law 18 months after Flight 217, signed in a quiet ceremony at the Department of Transportation with Marcus Sophia and 3 passengers from Flight 217 in attendance. Every commercial pilot in the United States, over 155,000 active licenses, now completed annual anti-bias certification or lost their medical clearance, and the training wasn't optional sensitivity workshops that pilots slept through. It was scenario-based, documented, and tied directly to their ability to fly. Airlines installed independent passenger complaint review boards with real authority investigators who didn't report to HR, who couldn't be silenced by management, who published quarterly transparency reports available to the public and posted online for anyone to see. The FAA launched Passenger Voice, a real-time discrimination reporting app that passengers could use mid-flight, sending alerts directly to federal monitors instead of vanishing into corporate databases where complaints disappeared like smoke. Within 2 years, documented cases of passenger profiling dropped by 62%, not because discrimination stopped, but because when it happened, there were consequences that followed within days, not years. Flight attendants who reported discrimination were protected by federal whistleblower statutes with penalties so severe that airlines couldn't afford to retaliate. Pilots who violated the protocol faced immediate suspension, and the Passenger Rights Review Board named after Marcus Clayton, a 10-year-old black boy removed from a flight in 2019 for looking nervous, investigated every case with the intensity previously reserved for mechanical failures. But the real change wasn't in policy documents or training modules. It was in culture, in the unspoken understanding that bias had consequences now that passengers had power, that silence wasn't protection anymore. A viral video from 2025 showed a white businessman in Dallas interrupting a gate agent who'd questioned a Latina woman's ticket, saying on camera, "I watched the Hayes video. I'm not staying silent this time." The video got 40 million views. The gate agent was retrained. The woman boarded her flight. And somewhere in a government office in Washington, Marcus saw the clip and allowed himself something rare. A smile, not because the work was finished. Systems don't get finished. They get maintained. But because the work was working. 3 years after Flight 217, Marcus stood in Terminal 7 at JFK, the same terminal where it had all started, for an unveiling ceremony that Horizon Atlantic had requested and he'd reluctantly agreed to attend. Near Gate B-14, mounted on the wall beside the jetway door, was a small brass plaque that read, "In memory of the passengers who were told they didn't belong. In honor of the moment we decided they did. Flight HA217, Gate B14. The beginning of accountability." Marcus ran his fingers over the engraving, then looked up at the departure board where hundreds of flights blinked destinations across the country, across the world, carrying thousands of passengers who would board planes today without fear, without being questioned, without having to prove they belonged. The system wasn't perfect. It never would be, because systems were built and maintained by imperfect people, making imperfect choices, but it was awake now, and awareness was the oxygen that kept justice alive. He boarded a flight that afternoon, first-class seat, 1A, same as always, and the captain who stopped by his seat before takeoff was a young black woman named Taylor Brooks, who said quietly, "Director Hayes, I got my license because of you. My instructor used your story to teach us that the cockpit isn't a throne. It's a responsibility. Thank you." Marcus shook her hand and said, "Fly safe, Captain." And when the plane lifted off, smooth, steady, without fear, he closed his eyes, put on his headphones, and let the hum of the engines carry him home, knowing that somewhere below a kid in a hoodie was buying a plane ticket and wouldn't have to prove he belonged, because the sky finally remembered it was for everyone. Look, I need to be real with you for a minute. I've told a lot of stories on this channel, stories about people who were underestimated, dismissed, humiliated in public, and then flipped the script in ways that left the whole room speechless. But this one hits different. Not because Marcus Hayes had a badge or a title or the power to ground an airline, but because he had something Captain Monica Ashford didn't: the ability to see people as people, not threats to her comfort. Let me tell you what I learned from this story, not as a narrator, but as someone who's lived enough life to know that what happened on Flight 217 wasn't rare. It was just recorded. Monica Ashford spent 28 years treating passengers like obstacles in her personal power fantasy. She kicked people off planes because they wore the wrong clothes, spoke the wrong language, looked the wrong way. And for 28 years the system protected her. Not because she was right, but because she was profitable. She saved fuel. She flew on time. She had a perfect safety record. And in corporate America, that's often enough to bury 47 complaints in a filing cabinet and pretend they never happened. Here's what that tells me. Accountability isn't automatic. It doesn't happen because it's right. It happens because someone with power decides that human dignity matters more than quarterly earnings. Marcus Hayes didn't punish Monica Ashford because she disrespected a federal official. He held her accountable because she'd been disrespecting passengers for 3 decades, and no one had stopped her. He just happened to be the one passenger she couldn't erase. If you've ever been in a workplace, a classroom, a store, or a plane where someone abused their authority and got away with it, you know what I'm talking about. The system doesn't care until the system is forced to care. Marcus forced it. And that's the difference between complaining and changing. Tyler Brennan, the first officer, knew Monica was wrong. He'd seen her do this before, kick off passengers, make racist comments, wield her authority like a weapon, and every single time he stayed quiet. Why? Because it wasn't his problem. Because she was the captain. Because speaking up might cost him his job, his mortgage, his baby's future. But here's the thing about silence. It's not neutral. When you watch injustice happen and you say nothing, you're not staying out of it. You're taking a side. You're telling the person being harmed that their dignity is worth less than your comfort. And you're telling the person doing the harm that they can keep going, that no one will stop them, that the coast is clear. Tyler learned that the hard way. He kept his job, but he lost something bigger, his integrity. And when the investigation happened, when reporters asked him why he didn't stop her, he had no answer. Because there is no good answer to, why did you watch someone get hurt and do nothing? Here's my advice. If you see something wrong, say something, even if your voice shakes, even if it costs you something, because the cost of your silence is someone else's suffering, and that's a debt you can't pay back with apologies years later when it's safe. Richard Palmer, the businessman in Seat 1B, figured that out. He stayed silent during the confrontation, too uncomfortable, too unsure, too afraid of being wrong or making it worse. But afterward, he didn't just feel bad. He acted. He donated money. He trained others on bystander intervention. He became the guy who interrupts injustice instead of filming it for social media. That's growth. That's accountability. That's what it looks like when you learn from your mistakes instead of defending them. Monica Ashford looked at Marcus Hayes and saw a hoodie. She saw sweatpants. She saw skin. And from that, from a 3-second glance across a cabin, she constructed an entire narrative. He's a fraud. He's a thief. He doesn't belong here. She didn't ask questions. She didn't check the records. She didn't consider for even 1 second that maybe, just maybe, she was wrong. She saw what she wanted to see because it confirmed what she already believed deep in the part of her brain where bias lives unchallenged. And here's the brutal truth. That's how bias works. It doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't need facts. It just needs a glance, a gut feeling, a story you've been told so many times that you mistake it for truth. Marcus Hayes was a Navy commander, an MIT PhD, the head of the Federal Aviation Administration. But none of that mattered because Monica didn't see credentials. She saw a black man in casual clothes and decided he was a problem. That's not security. That's not policy. That's racism dressed up in a uniform and a Cartier watch. And if you think I'm being too harsh, if you think I'm exaggerating, ask yourself this. If Marcus had been a white man in a hoodie, would Monica have called the police? If he'd been a white man with a military ID, a black Amex and a boarding pass, would she have accused him of fraud? You already know the answer. And so does she, somewhere deep down where she won't let herself look. Monica Ashford had authority. She was the captain. She controlled the plane. She could decide who stayed and who went. And for 28 years, she used that power to make herself feel big by making other people feel small, to humiliate them, to remind them that in her world, she was the law and they were subjects. But Marcus Hayes had something different. He had power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself, the kind that waits quietly until the moment is right, and then acts with precision. And when Monica handed him the perfect excuse to destroy her publicly, to humiliate her the way she'd humiliated him, to make her feel as powerless as he'd felt sitting in that seat being accused of fraud, he didn't take it. He didn't gloat. He didn't mock. He didn't rub her face in it. He did his job. He held her accountable, reformed the system that had protected her, and moved on to the next problem. That's the difference between authority and power. Authority is what someone gives you. Power is what you earn. And how you use it, whether you lift people up or tear them down, that's character. Monica used her authority to feel big. Marcus used his power to make the system fair. One of them is unemployed and watching planes through a window. The other changed an industry. Here's what I love about Marcus Hayes. He didn't make this about him. He could have. He could have sued Monica, personally dragged her through the press, turned her into a meme, and walked away with a settlement check. But that wouldn't have helped the college kid who gets profiled next week. That wouldn't have protected the Muslim woman asked to move seats next month. That wouldn't have stopped the next Captain Ashford from doing the exact same thing. So instead, Marcus built a system. He created the Hayes Protocol Mandatory Bias Training Independent Complaint Boards, real-time reporting tools, transparent accountability. He didn't just punish Monica. He made sure that the next Monica couldn't hide behind a perfect safety record and a profitable fuel efficiency rate. That's what justice looks like. Not revenge, not headlines, not viral videos. Reform. If you've ever been wronged, truly wronged in a way that left scars, you know the temptation to just burn it all down to make them hurt the way they hurt you. I get it. I've been there. But here's the thing. Revenge feels good for about 5 minutes. Reform lasts generations. Marcus chose reform. And because of that, thousands of passengers will fly without fear. Hundreds of flight attendants will speak up without retaliation. And dozens of pilots who might have turned into Monica Ashford will think twice, get trained, and do better. That's legacy. That's the work that matters. This is the one I need you to hear, especially if you've ever been told you don't belong. Marcus Hayes didn't argue with Monica Ashford. He didn't beg. He didn't plead his case or try to prove he was one of the good ones or explain his credentials or justify his presence. He sat in his seat, showed his ticket, and said, "I'm not moving." Because here's the truth. Your worth is not up for debate. You don't have to audition for dignity. You don't have to prove you deserve respect. You are a human being, and that is enough. Monica wanted Marcus to shrink, to apologize, to accept her judgment and shuffle to the back of the plane like he'd done something wrong. And when he refused, when he sat there calmly and said, "No, I belong here," it broke her entire worldview. Because people like Monica need you to believe you're less than. They need you to internalize their judgment, accept their narrative, and disappear quietly. And when you don't, when you stand firm and refuse to shrink, they lose their power. So if you're reading this and you've ever been told you don't belong in a job, a school, a room, a seat, a neighborhood, a country, I need you to know something. They were wrong. You belong. You've always belonged. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for existing in a space you paid to be in, worked to be in, or simply deserve to be in. Lesson 7. The right thing is rarely the easy thing. Do it anyway. Marcus could have walked off that plane quietly, filed a complaint later, avoided the confrontation, the publicity, the scrutiny. He was exhausted. He just wanted to see his son graduate. He could have let it go, taken a voucher, moved on with his life. But he didn't. Because letting it go meant the next person would face the same thing. And the person after that. And the person after that. So he made the hard choice. He stood his ground. He used his platform. He triggered an investigation that would upend an industry, expose buried complaints, and force changes that made powerful people uncomfortable. And yeah, it was hard. It was public. It was messy. It cost him sleep and peace and privacy. But it was right. And that's the lesson doing the right thing will cost you. It will cost you comfort, convenience, maybe even relationships. People will tell you it's not worth it, that you should just let it go, that making waves will only hurt you. But not doing it will cost you something worse: your integrity, your self-respect, the ability to look in the mirror and know that when the moment came, you stood up. Marcus paid the price. And because he did, thousands of people will never have to pay it. So here's my challenge to you. If you've witnessed bias on a plane, in a boardroom, at a traffic stop, in a store, at school, don't stay silent. Document it. Report it. Speak up. You might not have a badge like Marcus, but you have a voice. Use it. Film it. Post it. Make noise. Because the only reason Monica Ashford got away with it for 28 years is because people stayed quiet. The moment people started recording, her career ended in 48 hours. If you've been profiled, dismissed, or told you don't belong, stand your ground. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be angry. But don't shrink. Don't apologize for existing in a space you paid for, worked for, or simply deserve to be in. Your dignity is not negotiable. Your worth is not up for debate. And you don't owe anyone proof that you're human. And if you're in a position of power, if you're the manager, the pilot, the teacher, the cop, the person with authority over someone else, remember this. Your authority is temporary. Your impact is permanent. Use your power to lift people up, not tear them down. Because at the end of the day, Monica Ashford had the uniform, the wings, the captain's seat, 28 years of experience, and a perfect safety record. And she still lost everything. Marcus Hayes had a hoodie, a truth, and the courage to say it out loud. And he changed the world. Before you go, if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible, profiled, dismissed, or told you didn't belong, drop your story in the comments below. Share where you were told you didn't belong and what happened next. Let's build a record, because every story told is a system that can't hide anymore. Hit subscribe if you believe respect isn't negotiable. Share this video if you know someone who needs to hear that their dignity isn't up for debate. And if you've ever stayed silent when you should have spoken up, today's the day you decide, next time you won't. The sky isn't fixed. Systems aren't perfect, but they're fairer than they were 3 years ago, and fair is the only altitude worth fighting for. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.